E-cigarettes are quickly becoming a popular thing, and even though they're used more commonly than ever, it's unlikely that you know very much about them. At first glance, most e-cigs don't look like e-cigarettes at all, but they still seem like they're used for the same purpose of smoking. Despite whatever preconceived notions are out there, the fumes from e-cigs are essentially vapor, not smoke. As a result, people who use e-cigs call them vaporizers, and instead of smoking, it's referred to as vaping. Vaping is becoming so popular that it's expected to grow from a $3 to $10 billion value in the next 2 years. It could just be a fad, but it could also be something big. The industry continues to gain traction with millions of people in the US for a number of reasons. Many get into it as an alternative to smoking so they can quit cigarettes. Some do it as a tobacco alternative for the nicotine. Others might just get into it for the various flavors you can get. Whatever the reasons may be for its growing popularity, vaporizer stores are popping up all over the country. The devices sold at these stores are somewhat different from the e-cigarettes you're likely familiar with from those found at convenience stores. The newer e-cigs are more reusable and adjustable than older closed models. Not only are the devices themselves more adjustable in a handful of ways, but so are the inhaled contents. Vaping might sound new and interesting to some, but being relatively new and easily comparable to smoking cigarettes, there's an understandable amount of concern over the negative effects. Unfortunately, the most ill-motivated and poorly informed people are pushing faulty information to advocate for restrictions. It's unsurprising that anti-smoking orgs such as the American Lung Association and Americans for Non-Smokers' Rights raise concerns for vaping, but something legitimately surprising is that large tobacco companies supposedly are the bigger health proponents against vaping. The tobacco companies want to regulate the vaporizer manufacturers and stores on a supposed health and safety basis. Now, just think about the implications of this. What better way to eliminate the rising competition than with a plea for public health at the aid of Big Brother? To give some context for just how clear the motivation really is, Reynolds American, which is considered big tobacco, sent a 100-plus page suggestion to the FDA in an attempt to ban the newer open vaporizer technology. It's worth mentioning that Reynolds American also produces a line of low-cost e-cigs called Views, which are found in convenience stores. Now remember, those convenience store e-cigs are considered the older versions of vaporizers. Keeping that in mind, the Federal Trade Commission recently approved Reynolds' merger with Lorillard, the previous owner of the popular Blue e-cig. Interestingly enough, Blue e-cig was another convenience store e-cig. Not too long ago, Reynolds American bought the Blue e-cig for $27 billion and will now ensure that only Views instead of Blue e-cig will be sold. An obvious red flag arises when the biggest advocates against smoking alternatives are cigarette companies that are buying up other smoking alternatives. The real power against vaping is more or less a corporate crusade. Realizing big tobacco's relationship with modern e-cigs, it's pretty clear how restrictions on e-cigs could inadvertently work in the favor of big tobacco. Now, health organizations are inadvertently aiding the corporate crusade with political advocacy. In California, Senator Mark Leno pushed for his Leno bill that would essentially prohibit e-cig use in public areas. Leno argues for the public prohibition on the basis that vaporizers are a tobacco product, even though there isn't any tobacco involved. Leno uses the tobacco argument because vaporizers don't produce smoke. Since they don't produce smoke, the only means of imposing governmental authority on the public use of vaporizers would be to redefine certain tobacco-free products as tobacco. Leno's bill had support from a national coalition of health organizations, including American Cancer Society, Cancer Action Network, American Heart Association, and American Lung Association. While it's seriously doubtful that the coalition's support for such an absurd redefinition stems from malicious intentions, the advocacy still helps big tobacco. When a national health coalition and Reynolds are politically on the same page for health issues, it should definitely raise another red flag, especially when it comes to tweaking legal definitions in a way that doesn't really make any sense. The FDA will possibly contribute to the restrictions on vaporizers, as it apparently considers redefining the contents used in vaporizers as tobacco. Reason being, the agency, much like the state governments, does not have the authority to regulate the technology unless it uses tobacco. The FDA spokeswoman Jennifer Haliski wrote in an email that the FDA intends to propose a regulation that would extend the agency's tobacco product authorities to other categories of tobacco products that meet the statutory definition of tobacco. If e-cigs were redefined as a tobacco product, this would likely give the FDA power to create market barriers on a young industry. Tobacco-owned brands like Vuse have already established themselves, so their ability to absorb the cost of health-related regulations would be easy. The FDA's interest in redefining the product, along with all of its support, makes for a perfect storm to overregulate. The organizations in the Health Coalition insist on the unhealthy nature of vaping, but few actually imply that vaping is healthy in itself. Instead, they simply imply that it's a healthier product in terms of its alternative, smoking. Those opposed to vaping assume that people will avoid unhealthy decisions simply because some of those choices have been restricted away. When reality kicks in, you realize that people will make bad choices either way. When the option of smoking is so prevalent, if you take away vaping, then smoking is the best thing out there. It's doubtful that anyone will be convinced by the rhetoric here, so let's go to the major differences. The actual stuff inhaled from vaporizers, which has been coined e-liquid, doesn't necessarily have nicotine. Online or in store, they can adjust nicotine content to as high as 2.4% or as low as 0. That's not 0.5 or 0.1, that's 0.0. The option to adjust provides another opportunity for smokers to eliminate the problem of addiction without needing to break the habit entirely. The e-cigs give an opportunity for a long-term benefit that wasn't available before. Of course, many news outlets try to cite totally irrelevant sources as to how useless e-cigs are as a cessation tool, even though numerous studies and surveys show mixed to positive results. While unwilling to promote the effectiveness, even the American Heart Association admits that vaporizers are equally to slightly more effective for quitting cigarettes than the nicotine patch. The AHA understandably wants to stick to the statement that e-cigs are probably unhealthy. As far as short-term benefits go, those who switch from cigarettes to vaping typically report improved breathing, digestion, depression, reflux, heart rate, congestion, and overall mood. The reasons for those improvements, in addition to the nicotine customization, are simply the lack of all the cigarette's contents. Vapors neither inhale paper, tobacco, or tar, nor do they inhale most of the other thousands of moderately known contents found in cigarettes. Not to mention, even if one doesn't believe in the health opportunities, restrictions deprive smokers the option to save their money. Smoking can become expensive as a habit or an addiction. A vaporizer in combination with e-liquid can be a lot cheaper. There might be a somewhat large startup cost, but the long-term expense of liquid pales to that of chain-smoking cigarettes. A pack a day can easily cost people up to and over $150 a month. A month of e-liquid for a heavy smoker could be between $40 and $80 a month with the same nicotine intake. Not to say that vaporizers will magically get smokers to quit, it just gives another more practical option. The will is still necessary. But even then, that doesn't take away from the value of the opportunities. Value present in all, the health crusaders choose to ignore them.